Ghana and Ivory Coast sign Memorandum of Understanding on Mining and Geological Cooperation. Also, caterers of school feeding program threaten to hit the streets if arrears owed them are not paid. Also ahead this afternoon, Ghana Education Service assures trainee teachers of postings this week. We've got the details of these stories for you here on Midday Live, as well as news from the world of entertainment and sports. And here's where we start off this afternoon. The regent of Bimbilla in the northern region, Tahidu Osman Kika, has asked Parliament to summon Member of Parliament for the area Dominic Nitiwul and Minister for the Interior Ambrose Dairy to brief the House on the security situation in the area. He was reacting to the burial of Nakpana Salifu Dawumi in Bimbilla, which he claimed was associated with firing of musketry and resulted in the firing of gunshots from other parts of the township. Here's a report by Zubaida Ismail.
In the northern region, following the burial of Nakpana Salifu Dawuni last Wednesday. The burial was expected to have come off on Thursday, but it was done earlier than scheduled due to security reasons. The regent of Bimbilla, Na Yakubu Andani, is unhappy with developments so far. Firing of musketry as well as drumming were heard on Saturday evening at the Nakpana's palace, in stark violation of directives by the Northern Regional Security Council. The Bimbilla Na Palace wants the Interior and Defense Ministers summoned before Parliament on the issues.
We urge these officials to steer clear of the chieftaincy matters in Bimbilla. But if they must, they should exercise impartiality.
The palace says it expects the Northern Regional House of Chiefs and the Regional House of Chiefs to condemn the development.
We call on the Regional and National House of Chiefs to strongly condemn the current development in Bimbilla and ask the government to be impartial in dealing with Bimbilla chieftaincy crisis.
In other news, the Ghana Gas Company has dismissed reports that its high level of propane content in the gas from the Atwabo caused the explosion at Atomic Junction. While admitting the high level of propane content in gas from their facility, Chief Executive of the company, Ben K.D. Asante, says there must be a proper audit of the gas supply chain.
Before the investigative body finds the cause of the Atomic Junction explosion, the gas tanker drivers have been on the blame shoot. In an interview with the Finder newspaper, chairman of the association, Shafiu Muhammad, is alleging that the high propane content in the LPG, the pressure of gas from a Atwabo processing plant, is far higher than imported LPG, which destroys vital components in the trucks and at filling stations, resulting in leakages and the resultant fires. Ghana Gas subtly agrees to the assertion the quality is high.
The simple reason is because of the native source. Ghana Gas LPG is from gas, it's from raw gas, all right? And TORS, or the one that's important, usually is from crude. That is not to say that it's bad. A lot of LPGs around the world are made from the raw gas.
But denies being responsible for any mishap.
Essentially, there are some issues with the discharge of the LPG into a stationary storage tank. There are some issues with it. And the driver, or maybe the attendant who was actually doing the discharge, could not arrest the situation.
The strict standards set by the Standards Authority, the company is resolute. It cannot be undermined.
The vapor pressure, according to the Ghana Standards Authority, should be bar 9 bar. So when you put LPG in a vessel, the pressure that it exerts on the side of the containing vessel should be no more than 9 bar. And the 2 years that Ghana Gas has been in operation, it has never gone past even 8.
Calls arrive for safety audit across the country. Komla Kluche, TV3 News, Accra.
And the Africa Center for Energy Policy has raised questions on government's policy on the implementation of the LPG cylinder recirculation model. According to the Executive Director, Benjamin Boakye, though it is a good idea on paper, there is the need to think through it and ascertain how it will affect the national policy of extending LPG to remote parts of the country.
Following the Atomic Junction gas explosion which claimed 7 lives and injured more than 150 others, President Akufo-Addo, on the advice of Cabinet, has directed the implementation of the LPG cylinder recirculation model. The model involves LPG bottling plants being sited away from congested commercial and population centers and consumers exchanging their empty cylinders with a filled one at designated exchange points. Low-risk outlets will be designated for the supply of gas to vehicles, with the whole exercise expected to be completed within 1 year. Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Benjamin Boakye, says the policy lacks detail.
I have my cylinders. They are in different shape. You have yours. It's in a different shape. Are we going to mix all those new and old cylinders together for this model to work? Or we are going to build new cylinders? And if we're going to build new cylinders, who is going to pay for it? Are we going to put a levy on LPG to be able to cater for this? There will also be cost of transportation, because these cylinders that are filled in remote locations will have to be transported at a cost. What will be the implication of that cost on encouraging more consumption? Because we have a national policy to really extend LPG consumption to the remotest part of our country.
Energy expert Kojo Poku expressed similar concerns.
If I have a faulty cylinder and I don't have to buy a new one, I can just deposit it at a retail outlet or a depot to pick a new one. That faulty cylinder has to go through an integrity check and be repaired or thrown away. If it is not, and it is only taken to a refill center and it's refilled and put back in the system, we are only recycling the problem from one household to another, okay? In the sense that if there is a leakage from that cylinder and it is put in a commercial area, the gas from there will be leaking slightly, and we know what can happen from that.
The Executive Director of the African Center for Energy Policy called on government to rather fix the problems associated with the current model rather than introduce a new policy.
With the current model, can we find a fix for it? Can we have a system that ensures that these explosions or these leakages don't happen? And I think it's feasible to do that.
You're watching Midday Live. Now, this afternoon, we continue a series on persons living with disability. We take a look at a news item on how basketball is helping persons living with disability overcome their challenges.
Disability is not an ability. Here I am. I'm a star. And with this sports team, wheelchair basketball, make me move around the world, and I have learned a lot.
When I was 18 months old, and through my mother's story that they gave me, she said I was attacked by polio.
You know, when it comes to able bodies, before they will shoot, they have to jump before. But to the extent that you can sit in the wheelchair and basket, I didn't know there was something like that. So when I got here.
A person with disability in my situation like this, at least you have to exercise your body first of all. By exercising your body, at least you can live long, and you will not become weak and weaker. At least you can stretch your because mostly some of us who are in this situation that we are don't normally exercise that, but they easily grow old. I normally stay at the corner there. You know, I don't rush on the ball. The moment the ball comes to my end, I have to make good use of it. That's why they normally call me one corner.
Inspiring one there. Disability is certainly not inability. Well, in other stories, prices of spare parts remain unchanged 2 months after government abolished duties on the product. Checks at the Abosokang spare parts market indicate prices of some goods have rather shot up, with traders lamenting on the negative impact on sales.
The home of spare parts here in Accra. But all is not well with traders. In June this year, Parliament passed the Customs Amendment Bill, which was expected to ensure the removal of import duty taxes on spare parts. 2 months after its implementation, traders here at Abosokang lament the impact is yet to be felt.
The windfall that we are supposed to have because of the abolishment of the import duty has not been achieved. And because of that, I must say we've not been able, to reduce prices as everybody was expected to do.
In some cases, prices have rather shot up. Yaro, a mechanic who has come to buy a fan belt, says the price has been increased from 40 to 90 cedis. Abdul Rahim Salifu sells car batteries. His prices are up by some 5%.
The prices have gone up. A 13 plate, we used to sell it at least, if you consider Accra last, we give it out before 280, yeah. But now, we can't even give it 280, last is 300.
The Abosokang Spare Parts Dealers Association expects the city to be stabilized.
What we are calling for is for the government to try as much as possible to let the exchange rate be stable. Because currently, the cedi to the dollar is about 4 cedis, 40 pesos. 4 cedis, 40 pesos to the dollar. And when we talk about those who, make imports from Europe, especially those using the euro, it is nothing to write home about.
Well, there you have it. So if you have intentions of coming here to get your spare parts, be sure to have enough on you because prices have not changed.
With Christmas in 2 months, prices are expected to go up. For TV3 News, Eton Amsi, Abosokang Spare Parts Market, Accra.
You're watching Midday Live now. It's relations between Ghana and Ivory Coast. The two countries have signed a memorandum of understanding on mining and geological cooperation. This is expected to reduce the tension that existed between the two countries as a result of water pollution along their borders.
And several senior officials. The government and people of Ghana warmly welcomed the Ivorian delegation in a true demonstration of the proverbial Ghanaian hospitality. President Ouattara expressed his appreciation to the government and people of Ghana for the overwhelming love and enthusiasm shown him from the moment he set foot on Ghanaian soil, and indicated that his visit and that of President Akufo-Addo's visit to Côte d'Ivoire in May this year was a clear manifestation of the exemplary ties between the two countries. He thanked the government and people of Ghana for the immense support and solidarity demonstrated during the Ivorian crisis, and fondly recalled the crucial role played by His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who was then the Foreign Minister of Ghana, by taking a principled and objective stance that ensured the peaceful resolution of the crisis in Côte d'Ivoire. In this connection, President Ouattara thanked President Akufo-Addo for his personal efforts in ensuring the return of Côte d'Ivoire to the path of democracy. The two presidents held fruitful deliberations on a wide range of issues in a very cordial and fraternal atmosphere. The two leaders also reviewed Ghana-Cote d'Ivoire bilateral relations and agreed to continue to build on the existing bonds of kinship and cooperation for the mutual benefit of their peoples. To this end, both presidents indicated their commitment to ensure the continuous deepening of brotherly ties beyond the existing framework for bilateral cooperation, such as the Permanent Joint Commission for Cooperation, and agreed to boost the momentum of Ghanaian-Ivorian cooperation by establishing a strategic cooperation framework referred to as the Strategic Partnership Agreement, SPA, which covers the following areas: A, defense and security; B, cocoa and cashew and other strategic crops; C, maritime cooperation; D, mining, energy, environment; E, transport; and F, economic policies. The two leaders noted that peace and security constituted a sine qua non for development and therefore agreed to strengthen cooperation in the area of defense and security to combat human trafficking, money laundering, drug trafficking, and the proliferation of arms. Both presidents agreed to intensify bilateral cooperation for the development of a win-win strategy for a sustainable cocoa industry. In this regard, the two leaders expressed commitment to the ongoing discussions between the Ghana Cocoa Board and Le Concierge Café Cacao to develop joint marketing strategies in the international trading platform and other related issues in the industry, and pledged to work together to enhance border security to curb the smuggling of cocoa. Both presidents acknowledged the spirit of brotherliness with which the maritime dispute between the two countries was handled from the beginning, and in this connection, the two leaders expressed their commitment to ensure the smooth implementation of the ruling by the Special Chamber of the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea, ITLOS, on the delimitation of the maritime boundaries between the two countries. In order to achieve this, the two leaders announced the establishment of a joint committee for the implementation of the ITLOS judgment and indicated that the composition of the committee would be decided later.
I will stay on this issue a little further as I've been joined in studio by Mensa Thompson. He is the Executive Secretary of Alliance for Social Equity and Public Accountability. Now, this visit by the Ivorian President to Ghana at this time is pretty timely, and we know that it follows the ITLOS ruling between the two countries, which ruled in Ghana's favor. Is that now you have called for government to get Parliament more involved in this agreement. Explain that further.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I mean, border disputes are pretty quite complicated issues and very challenging ones. We've seen how border disputes have done to countries like Japan and China, as we experienced in the dispute on the East China Seas. We've seen boundary disputes in countries like what we are seeing in the Korean Peninsula. We have the Gaza Strip and then the West Bank issue between the Israelites and the Palestinians. And most of these countries have experienced some level of tension that have mostly, breeded conflict and some form of unrest in those areas, like we've seen some even between Sudan and South Sudan. And so the dispute between Ivory Coast and Ghana traveling to this length, in a more smooth and more peaceful procedure is something that is worth commendable. And so it's not something that we have to joke with. And so we understand that judgment was in our favor, most of the things, and then the declarations Ghana was seeking at the ITLOS were given. But we also know that there's a rich diplomatic relationship between Ivory Coast and Ghana. Now these countries have enjoyed some of these ties for quite a long time, and that is why it's important that irrespective of the judgment that the ITLOS have given, the two countries have to sit down and reach an agreement on how to implement the ruling and perhaps see how they can meet each other halfway in the implementation of the ITLOS judgment.
Now, you've further called for Parliament to ratify these agreements that have been signed by the two countries. for there not to be a repetition of, say, the Gitmo 2 situation. Is it entirely necessary in this context?
Exactly. It is very, very important. I mean, we see what happened in the Gitmo 2 issue where it took 2 Ghanaian citizens to drag the whole Attorney General and government to court for what it described as a breach of Article 75 of the 1992 Constitution. Now, we've studied that provision of the Constitution, and it's very clear. And if you allow me, I'll read a portion of Article 75 of the 1992 Constitution, which says that the President may execute or cause to be executed treaties, agreements, or conventions in the name of Ghana. A treaty, agreement, or convention executed under the authority of the President shall be subject to ratification by an Act of Parliament or a resolution of Parliament supported by votes of 1/2 of all members of Parliament. So you see the provisions are very clear. And so any agreement between Ghana and Ivory Coast will fall under this provision. And to prevent any future dispute or recurrent of the situation that we're experiencing now, it is very important that this agreement that have been reached between Ghana and Ivory Coast today will be subject to parliamentary ratification.
So you're saying it will be key looking at the relations between the two countries.
Will be extremely
now, you've
important.
further gone on to predict some form of compromise from Ghana on the implementation of the ITLO's ruling. Can you specify what areas of compromise you are foreseeing?
Yeah, we are not privy to the agreement that have been reached, and we cannot say precisely the areas that are going to be compromised on. But we know that the judgment of the ITLOS, were quite elaborate. It wasn't just on the resources, which is the naturally occurring resources, which is oil and gas that were on there. There were also directions on how to manage the fisheries and then the life resources that is also in the sea. And so these are areas where Ghana looking to protect the interest of our investment in the area, because mind you, we are making a lot of resource investment in the area. We are doing a lot of explorations. We are making huge investments. We have to protect those investments, and that is why it is important that we get Ivory Coast on our side. And what do we offer them to be able to be on our side, especially in the exchange of security intelligence to protect our investment in those areas? So what are we offering Ivory Coast? And that is where we are saying that Ghana can compromise on some of these natural resources. That may not necessarily be oil and gas. To compromise? Yes, of course. That may not necessarily be oil and gas, but some of these live resources that are in the sea that could serve the in the good interest of Ivory Coast, so that we can continue that strong diplomatic ties that exist between those countries.
Mentor Thompson, grateful for your time this afternoon. He's the Executive Secretary of Alliance for Social Equity and Public Accountability. Grateful. Now, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo also addressed the media following the agreement signed between the two countries.
To reiterate again the pleasure that we have all had in having President Alassane Ouattara and this impressive delegation visit with us in Accra these last 2 days. It's obvious the reasons why Ivorian and Ghanaian leadership should always be in harmony and working together. Our two peoples demand it. We're neighbors, we're bounded by so many ties. And working together is the best guarantee that the various strengths that we have individually can be put together for the benefit of our two populations. I've been particularly lucky in my period as President of Ghana that I have on the Ivorian side a man of the stature and experience and quality of Alassane Ouattara. It has been a particular blessing for me as Ghanaian President that the Ivorian side should have such a leader. These 2 days have proved very fruitful, and I believe as the various agreements that have been worked out begin to play out in the public space, the Ghanaian people and the Ivorian people will see the necessity of this visit and its value to them. The delegation that came from Côte d'Ivoire speaks for itself in terms not just of the numbers, but of the significance of the ministers who came. I can say that on my part, virtually my entire government is here. And I suspect President Ouattara can say the same. And it is a measure of the importance that we attach to the relationship that these two groups of people have been assembled. They've done a tremendous amount of work, and I want to congratulate all the ministers involved on both sides and their leaders, the two ministers of foreign affairs, for an extremely productive engagement over these 2 days, which have been reduced into writing in the various memoranda that have been, and agreements that have been executed this morning. I think all of us understand one thing, and beyond the arrangements on paper and whatever technical understandings that there may be, if there is no will to make the words on paper live in the lives of people, they remain exactly that, words on paper. I'm very confident that in President Ouattara, I have a partner who's determined to translate the words we have found on paper into concrete actions to the benefit of our two peoples. That political will, that determination, that we move into an era of greater and greater intimacy, is what will give meaning to the work that we have done to these last 2 days.
That's President Akufo-Addo addressing the media at the Flagstaff House. Now, the decrease in prices of cocoa on the international markets has been a concern by the president, and that has instigated the need for some more collaboration between both Ghana and Ivory Coast to ensure that the prices of cocoa stabilize on the international market. Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire collectively total 60% of the world production of cocoa. However, both countries get only 10% of this figure collectively. So both Ghana and Ivory Coast make up only 10% of the 60% of cocoa that they supply to the world market. And that is what has called for there to be a rapid collaboration between the two countries. And still in some areas of where Ghana and Ivory Coast have some relations, in the area of security, particularly illegal mining, also known as Galamsey. And Ivory Coast has complained, and a delegation from Ivory Coast did visit Ghana earlier in the year to express anger and some discomfort about what the effects Galamsey is having on their water bodies. And semi-public water distribution company that's in Ivory Coast was shut down. That's a water treatment plant because of the levels of pollution in the Bia River, which enters La Côte d'Ivoire from the western region. And these are two key areas where the two countries need to collaborate and ensure that both of its people are protected. Now, international relations expert Professor Vladimir Nchidanso says the visit by Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara is indicative that the two countries have moved on after last month's boundary dispute ruling by the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. He believes Ghana and Ivory Coast can now chart a common development path in the area of increased cocoa productivity and value addition.
With or without the ITLOS decision, he would have come. Because one of the first visits our president embarked upon after having won elections in Ghana was to tour the West African sub-region. And in international diplomacy, we call something a reciprocal visit. Almost all the countries he's visited, if it's not whistle-stop visits and by invitation, then they will have to reciprocate to realign their relationship. So Ouattara would have come.
Does that mean, from your view and effect, that the ITLOS decision did not have any impact on the relations between the two countries?
I strongly believe that whatever impact it must have had would be a positive impact. Because here was a situation where we were battling over border lines, and the ITLOS settled it for us. It was a win-win situation. And so I believe it would not even be a very important item on the agenda if they want to talk about it. They must have spoken about it already, either by telephone or when they met earlier on outside, they must have spoken about it. And I think it's a positive thing.
The two countries, Ghana and Ivory Coast, play a huge role in terms of cocoa on the international market. Right. And the prices of cocoa have been falling. And President Akufo-Addo has raised concerns about this as well. Do you see this visit and some more collaboration from Ghana and Ivory Coast really making an impact in terms of the prices of cocoa on the world market?
I think what they can do is to talk about what to do with the product in such a way that we'll benefit from it. I strongly suspect that since our president is talking about this industrialization process, they might as well put their heads together and see whether we can't turn the millions of tons that we are producing, together into something else. So the best thing is to add value to it. The cocoa that we produce over here, if it is turned into chocolate and other butter and oil and that kind of thing, then supplies to them would have been minimized. And the less they have supplies, the more the prices will go up. Under the broad umbrella of security, they might discuss this issue of Galamsey. Yes, if you go to the Dollar Power area, it's a no-go area. A lot of Ivorians work there, and so it's a security thing. Again, if you look at the Ankobra River, the way we were polluting the rivers that constitute the border between us and Ivory Coast and affecting their economic activity, then it's also a security question. So they would necessarily be discussing this issue of Galamsey. I think our president would assure his counterpart of Ghana's effort to end or stem the tide of Galamsey. Since we are that contiguous in our sub-region and we are very prominent in ECOWAS and UEMOA respectively, I think they will also talk about integration, how to put our economies together so that we have a common market and build on to have a common currency. Our president has spoken eloquently quite recently about integration and how to forge ahead to get a common currency. And I think that will be part of the agenda. I strongly suspect also that these days, what is ruling the world is this canker of terrorism. In that sense, I think they'll be talking about not terrorism per se, but security generally of our borders, how to handle security, how to handle emigration and immigration. These things will form part of the general discussions. And probably to talk also about how we can invest in each other's country. So these are the three main things that the topics they may be discussing to cement the already cordial relationship that we have amongst them. On economics, they can talk about cocoa, they can talk about infrastructure development, they can talk about joint projects, they can talk about integration, as I've already spoken. And on security matters, it will be seriously on terrorism, how to stem the tide, how to have joint, specifically collaboration, especially with the security agencies, share information, share intelligence is very, very important. They will talk about all that.
You're watching Midday Live from the News Hub at Adisa Weekend. We've got some more news for you in a few moments' time. Stay with us. Welcome back to Midday Live. And some more stories this afternoon. The 2017-2016 academic year graduates from the various colleges are yet to be posted after training. Teacher trainees across the country are unhappy about this delay and are threatening demonstration. But the Director General of the Ghana Education Service is assuring the teacher trainees of postings as soon as results for their final exams are released this week. Now, I've been joined in studio by the National President of the Teacher Trainees Association, Jonathan Apam. Grateful for your time this afternoon. Welcome to Midday Live.
Thank you very much.
So the GES has assured of teacher trainees of postings this week, right?
Yes.
Isn't that deal sufficient for you?
All right, thank you so much. Before I make any comments on that, let me thank the teacher trainee fraternity, especially the newly trained teachers who have been hot on us seriously on their postings. I am very confident that government will listen to our cry. About these postings, in fact, we are very happy that the ministry and the GES have responded positively to our cry. And it's that, school has resumed long ago. They are even in the CIF week, the basic schools. We are supposed to be posted. We start the academic year with those on field already, so that it doesn't bring some conflictions. Right now, if you post someone in the middle of the term, it will affect the academic process. That is why we're all crying out loud. It is that we're only putting out unnecessary pressure. Now, I just came from the GES headquarters, so I want to sound out to the newly trained teachers who are waiting seriously for their posting that GES has assured us that within the week, in fact, they have even almost completed the process of posting them. Only that they need some processes to go through, then within the week they will post them. Our problem now, which we've communicated duly to GES and they are looking at it, is that the newly trained teachers have a pathetic issue because in their curriculum there was some kind of changes, a bit change, where they were supposed to stay on campus for 5 semesters and go to teaching practice for 1 semester. Suddenly the academic calendar changed, where they had to be rushed out to go and do their teaching practice. So for them to have followed the right procedure through the academics, it changed. So these people, good. So these people were not comfortable. They were supposed to go out with only 3 courses or 2 courses, where they went with 5, including teaching practice and project work. So in fact, they were a bit frustrated.
So in effect,
most of them failed some of the papers because they were not given the time to learn. Now, when they failed, that wasn't all. Instead of them to be given the chance to write their receipt as previously were doing it, they were not given the opportunity to write. So I trail a paper, I'm not given the opportunity to write, I will not be posted. So you see that the whole misconception is that, is it the fault of the teacher trainee or the fault of GES? So right now our appeal is that those who have trailed in 1 or 2 papers, last year they were posted by GES and treated as people teachers. This time we are appealing to GES and government to do same. And even let's consider that it wasn't much of their fault. Even if it's their fault,
you cannot confirm, you cannot say for a fact, however, that it wasn't their fault.
We cannot say for that fact. But what we're saying is that if GES can absorb people or people from university and senior high schools to be teachers as people teachers, people who are trained specifically for teaching, if one should fail a paper or 2, it doesn't necessarily mean the person cannot teach. Maybe some hazard or some other problems might have caused a failure. But we have people who have been trained specially for teaching. So if someone has failed or failed in 1 or 2 papers, that person could still teach and be maybe could be classified as a people teacher for now. And when they write their exams, they'll be posted.
So therefore, you're asking for them to go ahead and teach.
Great.
And still resit these exams that they failed in.
Great.
And then upon succeeding in the exam.
Great. They'll be upgraded. One more thing, I would like to also let this news out that we want to hit our people that Ministry of Education has just paid some part of the feeding grant to NCT for disbursement. So the newly trained teachers...
And you said you were at the ministry earlier today.
Yes,
so you
I was
can
there
confirm
today.
That this is true.
Yes, I confirmed that from the Minister for Education, Dr. Matthew Poku Prempe, who confirmed to me this morning that they had paid some monies to NCT. Very soon they are going to do calculations and some processes, and it will be disbursed to all principals, will be given to them. So hopefully the newly trained teachers, the 3rd years and even the 2nd years on campus now, well, after the calculation, we'll get to know which batch will be getting that money or which batch will not be getting them. So for the postings, I am much confident in the posting department because I was there this morning. I saw the processes that they were doing. Everything is intact now. It's only left with the board to meet, discuss over a little bit issues and some processes so that it will be released.
So at your visit earlier today at the Ministry of Education, were you able to express some of these concerns that you have? Were you able to put them forward?
Yes, we put them forward, even not today. We put them forward last week on paper. In a discussion, we've put them forward. And I think that has even delayed a bit the processing for the postings. So I'm very optimistic that they may consider us in that kind of regard because they had finished already and they were only waiting for commencement letter from Ministry of Finance. But from the reaction today, when I reacted with the posting department and the Minister for Education this morning, I think it's very positive. It's very positive. We are appealing that they should continue that and post our people. At least they should be treated as people teachers who have trailed. So that when they finish their exams, even in this October 30th, they are starting the paper. So if they are posted, and when they finish the paper, or when they are successfully through, they upgrade them. That's all what we are seeking.
So you're looking forward to a positive outcome?
Yes,
hopefully.
Very positive.
Jonathan Appam, National President of the Teacher Trainees Association, grateful for your time this afternoon. You're still live here on Midday Live. You've got the latest news from the world of business for you shortly. Stay with us.
Is brought to you by
In business news this afternoon, a two-week regional course to enable the compilation of monetary and financial statistics for the central bank is underway in Accra. At its opening, research advisor at the Bank of Ghana, Grace Akrofi, underscored the need for data to be regularly updated and easily available to make it possible to fix the monetary policies of the economy.
Monetary policy is a process used by the central banks to control the supply of money, often targeting the rate of inflation or interest rate of the country. The use of data on financial assets and liabilities is therefore a requirement.
Getting data is because maybe we don't have the requisite staff in those institutions we are trying to cover. For example, the credit unions, how reliable are the staff there who compile the data? Some of them complain about lack of things like computers to be able to get the data and transmit the data.
With participants drawn from several African countries, a financial statistics manual guide would enable the compilation of monetary statistics for the central banks, depository corporations and other depository corporations.
It's important to have very good monetary and financial statistics. If you take the monetary and financial statistics of any economy, you should be able to tell the performance of the financial sector. You should be able to also measure the extent and efficiency of monetary policy, because that is the data that informs or the basis for monetary policy analysis.
And there's more business news on our website, 3news.com. We've got the latest from the world of sports with Yael Fusulabi in a few moments. Stay with us. With outstanding performances, Central Region's Barber's consistency in delivery has not swayed as she dazzled once again in last night's episode. Adramo Felse has filed the following report.
1% of Ghanaians who are Christians, and when I'm saying this, it's including the charismatic, the Orthodox churches, Protestants, and those other Christian religions as well.
Baba had a big sweep in Sunday's episode as she grabbed 3 out of 4 awards for the night after a stunning performance. The awards were Most Disciplined in the Reality House, Best Costume, and Overall Star Performer for the night. Sewa's poise on delivery also earned her Most Eloquent Performer for the night.
Let me ask you, Alfred, how many women have you invited on this show since January?
The show, which took a different dimension, allowed all 6 contestants to co-perform with presenters within the Media General fraternity. Posing as guests on different programs, the contestants talked about how the media contributes to the progress of the country with regards to issues of politics, religion and censorship.
2 of 3 adults keep their social media passwords secret from their partners. Really? And 16% of couples link Facebook use to jealousy.
While some of the contestants were on top of their game, others could not make an impression on the judges. Some of them could not contain the excitement after their performance.
I've realized I'm a fast talker, so I've been trying to work on it, and it seems like I'm getting positive feedback. So I'm very grateful.
I was very relaxed, and it was more like I was having a conversation with her, yes, and I'm sure that's how come I got such wonderful comments from the judges.
So today's section was quite fun and different because all the time we always stand to present and do all sorts of things, but today's interview was to have a chat with presenters.
After staging the performances together with the contestants, some of the presenters said the show was on a different pedestal.
GMB 2017 is in progress upon progress, and every day is an improvement upon the other. If you witnessed and been looking back from when they started, and if you listen to the comments that came today after the deliveries, you realize that it's been improvement upon improvement. And so sure, they are really learning very well, and then they are actually keeping to the task.
The ladies are really performing, exhibiting the talent they have within them, and that is one hallmark about Ghana's Most Beautiful. I mean, the ladies are really well coached and you understand what they do. So when you sit back by your TV set watching them, you realize that this is indeed a pageant that you have to watch.
The show gets even more competitive as 6 contestants remain in the battle for the crown. Ghana's Most Beautiful 2017, straight out of Ghana.
Well, and Ghana's